Welcome to For the Record, which is a conversation series where we talk to music heads about their stories and the music that makes them. Um, for those watching at home, we'll actually create a create a dedicated channel for this episode where you can discuss the music mentioned here and ask questions and things like that. But yeah, X, it's great to have you here. Thank you for for taking the time. Excited to chat. Always like to start at the beginning and learn a little bit more about you, your background. If you can dive into the beginning of, when your relationship with music started and work your way forward from there.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for having me again. Yeah, so I always start off at like kind of the family background and history and stuff like that. So I'm half Puerto Rican, half Cuban. I'm Xcelencia, by the way. I'm an artist, songwriter, music producer. I'm actually an engineer by trade, audio engineer by trade.
Cool.
And so yeah, I think for me it was like very early on my exposure to music, two cultures, right? Like the Puerto Rican side and then the Cuban side, and like um, I remember early on, we discussed this on the podcast.
Mhm.
Seeing, my grandfather's and dad's record collection was a huge inspiration to me, right? Because at the time I had no idea what it was. So just a bunch of big, cover arts and all these like insane psychedelic covers, and like it was just a mix of all kinds of music from Latin music to classical to, I mean, soul. I mean, just a little bit of everything. And so like I remember thinking, what is this? Like I have no idea what it is. And that was kind of like very early on, my exposure to music. And I remember reading liner notes, lyrics, and trying to figure out what was happening. Then I started, you know, listening to music where I was like, "What is this?" Which was essentially, anything that had like synths or electronic sounds and stuff. Because I already knew what a band was, right? And like
Yeah.
Latin music, Latin culture, a lot of percussion, trumpets, like all these different things, but you never really hear synths on
Mhm.
those records. And so like I remember hearing synths for the first time and thinking like, "How did they make this? How did they do this?" And that kind of led me down a rabbit hole of production early on.
Mm.
And the songwriting stuff was just me naturally just stuff, notebooks, during class, after class, whatever it was, just me kind of like whatever came to mind, I would just spill it out on the notebook. So it was a combination of all these different things, exposures.
Oh, awesome! I love that. Do you remember any of the early records in particular that you found in those collections from like early childhood?
Yeah, so this one may seem like an obvious one kind of, but it was actually Thriller. Like they had Thriller in vinyl, which I never found it again.
Oh,
So
really?
when I inherited the collection, I'm over here looking for that record and I couldn't find it. And it
Mm.
just, like, blew my mind. I'm like, "Wait, did someone, like, before sending this out, like, 6, 7 boxes of records, from Puerto Rico to Florida, did someone pull out the Thriller and kept it?" That was, like, my thinking initially. Um,
I mean, it's probably pretty valuable record at this point. I mean, maybe that is what happened.
yeah, you know what? I wanna say that at the time, it was, like it might have been when Michael passed. I'm not too
Mm.
sure. So it was, like yeah, it was around that time. Yeah, early on, it was that one. There was a Santana record, which I love
Mm.
the cover. I hang it up just because of the cover, but then actually hearing it, man, there was a Beastie Boys one that like blew my mind too, because it was like pre disco, stuff, and like it
Mm.
was a pretty epic one. And
Cool.
then just yeah, just different ones, Latin records and things like that.
Cool. Um, and then I'm also curious, like, the first time you heard a synthesizer, do you remember like in what context that was, what the album was, what the artist was, anything like that?
I don't well, okay, let's just say I subconsciously I probably heard it a bunch of times, but I remember sitting in the car. And it was a radio, I can't remember what song it was, to be honest, but it was like a really, like, piercing lead synth.
Mm.
So, it's, like, really obvious, and I was like, "Wait, like, what is this?" Like, I guess that was the first time I kind of was like, "How did they make this?" Right? I had no instruments, I had no musical background, nothing like that, it was just me kind of learning and going off of what I've heard and stuff.
Right. So, so what are the next steps in the journey after, what you've been exposed to all these different sounds and, these really large record collections and you start scribbling, your own songs like onto pages, begin songwriting. Like what is the evolution? Like how did you get into audio engineering? How did you like what did your first art look like?
Yeah. So I remember during this whole songwriting thing, I used to follow a lot of the early underground reggaeton music, and all of it was basically various artists compilations. So that was like the thing. Like you wanted to be, if you were an artist in the reggaeton world in Puerto Rico, you wanted to be on one of these albums because that was how you got the exposure. So it was
Mm,
basically like a playlist, right? A mixtape of just a bunch of artists and like yeah, I remember like that was the thing. Like every DJ at the time, which was like we used to call the producers, the actual music producers, DJs out in Puerto Rico. They kind of went they went with like the DJ. So it'd be like DJ Xcelencia or DJ X or whatever. But they were the actual like beat makers, and like reggaeton was very early to basically, the majority of reggaeton, I wanna say, was produced on FL Studio, which is like no one actually knows the history behind it, but when you listen to a lot of reggaeton, even though it's really slowed down, you get the dancehall influence, but you hear a lot of these, like, electronic sounds, and it was because of FL Studio was kind of primarily designed for electronic music, and
mhm,
we were, like, basically using these synths, but at a really low tempo, like, I'm talking maybe 80 the lowest, 85, 90, 95, somewhere in that range. So it sounded cool, like hearing a sound that was designed to be at a 120 to 130, like that slow down. But yeah, just all those little things. I started, digging into production on top of the songwriting. I remember I wanted a label early on, going back to the various artists thing. I remember seeing that and kind of making my own track lists and thinking like, I want to hear this artist with that artist and like, because there used to be like groups and beefs and like this
mm,
DJ would have his own group, and they'll do their album, and then the other guys, and then they'll diss each other, and, like, it was just kinda, like, crazy times, and they were trying to ban and censor, reggaeton at the time too in Puerto Rico. I was a kid at that time, but, like,
mm,
you go back to the history of it, and then you start seeing that. Um, yeah, I remember wanting a label at, like I was, like, in middle school. I had no idea what a label was. I remember reading about labels and A&Rs and all this stuff at that age, and I'm like, "Actually, that's what I wanna do."
mm,
Um so yeah, it was like I was always also following, the business side, and, yeah, I remember writing my songs. I started beat making. I met one of my good friends through music. All my friends are basically, artists, producers, and writers. This was like high school, and we were all doing our thing, and we were pretty known in our school and all that stuff because we were really active. And we went on to do like, our own thing, but we're still, pretty close connected. It's been like 10, 15 years since that.
yeah.
And yeah, I remember I knew what I wanted to do. I dropped out of high school actually. So like it wasn't that I dropped out to become an artist. It was more about like I know exactly what I want to do. Let me pursue this. And that's when I actually went to audio engineering. So it was like a trade school. I remember doing that. I did like a year of that. And it was pretty intense because it was a year of just learning everything from, recording, music production to post production for film and stuff like that. So like I got trained very early on, like Pro Tools and all that stuff. And I started making my own music from there as an artist and helping others. And I worked in pretty big studios here in my city. And yeah, that was like the early days. I want to say that was like '09, 2010. From there, I just kept distributing music, making music. And now I'm here.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious going back, like why was Puerto Rico trying to ban reggaeton?
Man, it was the content, the lyrics, it was super
Um,
explicit at the time.
mm,
It was either sex or it was like the drugs and like the lifestyle out there. A lot of the music came from residential project housing. Um,
mm,
we have a different name for it in Puerto Rico. So a lot of these mixtapes and early, cassette tapes and stuff that were being recorded were in these areas. It was like
right.
the barrio or it was the project housings and stuff like that. So a lot of that came from street culture. And yeah, I remember that being a thing where they were trying to censor it and block it. And like it was interesting because then over the 2010s, reggaeton started getting more poppy and like even after it like kind of globalized and commercialized, it got really poppy.
Mm,
And then, I remember, like, 2016, it went back to, like, the gritty, like,
mhm,
just say whatever you want, And it got pretty crazy, and people were, like, shocked, but I'm like, this is kinda how it started." And, like, what I loved the most about that era was that the labels completely slept on it. So while the labels were trying to manufacture their own kind of reggaeton sound, it just went back to its essence, to its roots, and that kind of set off the this current run up and boom of Latin music, in my opinion.
Cool. Can you give us an example of like some of the the communities, the artists that were really important for the initial traction that reggaeton was getting in those early days in Puerto Rico, and then like who were some of the people responsible for revitalizing some of the original reggaeton in 2016.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Man, it was like early 90s. We got a lot of our inspiration from like New York hip hop, but then also dance hall in Panama, and then
Hmm.
also like reggae Jamaica. So like we combined all that stuff, right? And then early 90s, it was a lot of Latin hip hop. So you had people like Vico C. He's kind of like a legend known for, kind of being one of the pioneers of Spanish hip hop in Puerto Rico. And you had, all kinds of like freestylers and DJs and a bunch of people that came out in the 90s following that. Daddy Yankee was an early pioneer. I mean, this guy's been around 30 years consistently, which I've never seen across like other genres, at least in terms of like how relevant he still is. And he was very early to those cassette tape days and mixtapes and all of that. Um, the DJs played a huge role. These producers. It's a funny story actually. How we used to just they used to sing over loops. So that was the thing. You would freestyle or sing over dance hall loops,
Mm.
um, or rhythms, as they call them, and like hip hop break beats and stuff like that. And I remember this DJ producer saying that he was drunk in a club one day and he heard the music slow down. And so that sort of gave him the inspiration to slow down the tempo. And that's what kind of created like reggaeton as we hear it today.
Just some random drunk guy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He's there drunk in the club, and then I guess he went home right after and he slowed the tempo down because it was all kind of sped
Mm.
up.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, it's crazy sometimes how how movements start. Sometimes it can just be a drunk guy.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah. I love that story.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, and then I want to create a little bit of space, for you to talk about, some of the projects that you're working on, like your own music, that you're working on today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Man, so it's been yeah, I've been distributing music since like I want to say CD Baby was actually I think my first distributor. And so then like over the years, I just, kept going. I was dropping songs for free like on these forums and blogs. So we actually used to pay to pirate our music because these groups had a lot of like exposure and reach and they would promote the
Mm,
music on like Twitter, forums, blogs. And it was more about those days, it was more about getting exposure than getting paid because we loved what we did, and it was like within a week, we'll make a song and then just put it out. This was like really early on before it kind of catched on and became a thing. But yeah, I've been dropping albums since I want to say 2014, and this has all led me to my current project right now, which is the El Niño Estrella, which is like my upcoming album. Hopefully, I can start releasing the singles pretty soon. And yeah, man, I'm excited. I've talked about it a bit, but it feels like a full circle moment, kind of going back to the roots, to the essence, but um, still, trying to innovate on the sound and trying to push things in a way that I like doing.
mm.
And yeah, I'm excited for that to start kind of rolling out.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm excited to hear it. Do you have any dates of like when you think like the first tracks will be
Yeah, so I'm
released?
thinking end of this month should be the first one.
Cool.
I'm excited. There's actually a Web3 artist on there. And yeah, she's great. We connected maybe a year ago or something, or even more than that. I can't even remember, but yeah, I've supported her. I love the music, her style. Like this song is it's not her style or what she's trying to do, but like I
Mm,
still sent it, and I'm like, hey, if you want, and like it ended up becoming like something else entirely. So I'm excited to put it out. It's like Afrobeat, but then it has a little bit of like electronic influences. I mean, it's a great fusion, yeah.
Cool. I love that. Are you able to share who it is? Are you holding that
Yeah,
holding
yeah,
that down?
Taro. Have you heard of
Oh,
Taro?
nice. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a random, but it sounds amazing. She did great. And the song just flows. I'm excited to put that one out.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. I'm excited to hear it. Um, cool. Okay, so now I'm gonna transition a bit into like more of the Q&A, like talking about the music that you're listening to and things like that. I'm curious first to know how you discover music. What are the platforms that you're using, for your own music discovery?
And that's a good one. So I kind of use a few couple different platforms. I still use Spotify for discovery. Um, there's just something where like a lot like Latin music tends to do pretty well there. And so
Hmm.
like I always imagined different like styles and subgenres and stuff of Latin music, like maybe from like 10 years ago. So I kind of was forecasting that we would get here. So like I was like, we're gonna see like more alternative like Latin music and artists, and we're gonna see Latin R&B and like these different things that were kind of like they were happening, but not as much. And so that's kind of the one thing I liked about Spotify, at least early on, was able to discover like, for example, artists from Mexico that were doing R&B in Spanish, and I thought it was amazing. So I was definitely kind of went down that rabbit hole early on. Socials, I still use it. I used to do the whole forums thing, man. That's where I really discovered a lot of artists early on, but then that kind of like, died out a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I want to say that Web3, I discovered a lot of artists. I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago, and I was telling them about, kind of the label and my vision, and they asked, how are you discovering artists? And I'm like, well, a lot of it is, through relationships, connections, platforms, and then I've actually discovered artists in Web3 that I didn't know of before, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people with me. And I've seen, yeah, I kind of like going anywhere, right? Like I love discovering music on catalog. I
Mm.
like seeing people kind of doing things on Zora, on Sound. So when people say that there's no real like community or scenes or culture here, I'm kind of like, you might need to take a step back because I kind of see something happening here that these artists weren't releasing music elsewhere, or they probably weren't doing as well. They kind
Yeah.
of came in here to see what could happen. So yeah, it's a bit of everything, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting time, I think for Web3 and how we're still, describing artists as Web3 artists, and
Yeah.
not leading with the genre, we've sort of like a small enough, community of artists that's enough to say it says
Right, right.
something about, about the ethos and you can still collaborate like regardless of what genre you're in, as you're just talking about with, your track with Tarot. Like you know, there are interesting opportunities to converge these styles and make something new.
Yes, yes, 100%. Which I did it with Harrison first on my previous project, and we put something out, and that song has done really, really well for us.
Mm,
And again, it was really organic. It wasn't like forced. Like I didn't even know that he was just strictly a producer at the time, and I kind of left him an open verse, and I told him, "Hey, do your thing here." And he's kind of like, "Well, I don't sing, but I'll do it." And so like he did it, and like we put it out, and that song did really well for us. So I've always been a fan of the crossover, as we call it, in English and Spanish, bilingual stuff. And that's something that I want to continue to do through my music.
totally. I love that. Um, okay, cool. Next question. Who are three artists of note that you have heard for the first time in the past year?
Wow. That's a hard one. The past year.
Yeah. Past
Man.
year-ish. It doesn't have to be exactly a
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Because we're not, the year's not done yet.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. What is time anyways?
Man, I discovered an artist on Catalog actually. I can't remember her name though. That's kind of disappointing. But yeah, ever since I discovered her there, I was like, this is amazing. Like I see, yeah, that's one. It might be that I don't know how to pronounce it, so
Mm,
maybe that's the thing.
fair, fair. We can add that retroactively to this
Yeah,
to this.
yeah, yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I'm about to pull up the Spotify.
Do it, do it. That's
Yeah, yeah,
allowed.
let's do it, let's do it, let's see, let's see.
You would not be the
Actually,
first
like
person to do that.
so I actually like the songs, I add them to playlists, like, I'm, like, kind of, like, really organized with all of it.
Hmm, cool.
Let's see. Let's see what we got. It's funny, I have a Web3 one where I just added a bunch of people to it
Oh, nice.
just to keep track of what they're doing and stuff like that. I
That
know
would
that's
be
taboo to say.
I mean, not it I mean, Spotify is still like a it's still a great, listening experience, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Man, that's a great question. That really challenged me here. Maybe I haven't been as actively, discovering. But
I
I
mean, it
do
could
I
al
do follow a lot of them are really Latin artists that I like to find and discover and kind of find those gems,
yeah, I mean, it
for
doesn't have
sure.
to be like a new artist either. It can be someone like, from the '60s who
Right, right.
you just happened to discover over the past
Oh,
year.
that's a good one. Dang it. Yeah, I can't think of any right now off the top. There was a Spanish artist, that I discovered. She just popped up here, Judeline.
Judeline?
She's from S yeah, Judeline or Judeline, Spaniard artist, very alternative. I think she's gonna go on to do some great things.
Cool.
I was like it was one of those, like, you hear it and you just can't keep your, like, ears off of it.
Mm,
That was
cool.
definitely one that I was like, "Wow, like, I haven't felt like this in a minute, so, like, let me save this one for sure."
Okay, cool. Good to know. Julian's a good one. And yeah, yeah, as we move on, if others come to your mind, just
Yeah,
give it a
yeah,
shot.
for sure, for sure.
Um, okay. Here's another one. Who's the most underappreciated artist from your favorite music decade?
Hmm, man, underappreciated artist from my favorite decade. I don't know why I was just reminded of what I was saying earlier about discovering the Beastie Boys catalog,
Mm.
the disco, and I think that's an interesting one that I share with people, and it kinda blows their mind because 'cause they're just expecting, like, the same stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's some, like hold on, um, I had some stuff saved here, but it's not Beastie Boys, hold on. Man, I got them mixed up, so Bee Gees, Bee Gees.
The Bee Gees. I was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
say
I
Beastie
think I
Boys and
said it
Bee Gees is
earlier.
like a whole new thing for me.
Yeah, yeah, no, sorry, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, so yeah, I fell down that rabbit hole, I got 'em mixed up. But yeah, yeah, that's definitely one that I think about a lot. But again, I wasn't around that decade, right? So,
Right.
maybe it was out there.
Yeah. I don't know, it's just you don't have to have been around like your favorite music decade, I guess. But I mean, Bee Gees is a great one. I haven't listened to Bee Gees in a long time, but they do have like a pretty their catalog is pretty varied, which is
Yeah, yeah,
pretty
it's
cool.
varied, it's pretty extensive.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's interesting now, like, people kind of like, they go back, but they're kinda limited by it. So, like, I recently went back to, like, listening to Dead Prez, just because a lot of their records, talk about kinda like the industry, so you can kind of hear things in there where, like, they're happening now, and they were kind of telling us about it, very early on. So I always find those, stories to be interesting, so I'll go down that rabbit hole recently, MF Doom, same thing. I've been really tapped into a lot of video essays lately about just industry stuff and
Mm,
finding artists that were kind of hinting at where the industry was going at the time. That's something I've been doing lately as well.
cool. Uh, if you have any recommendations of links to watch that you found to be particularly insightful, would love to
Man, I
Kinda
can't
like,
stop. It's been, like, the only thing like, I have to force myself not to watch. But yeah, that the underappreciated, I would say a lot of the underground hip hop
mhm,
90s has been super inspiring for me lately. Late 90s.
late 90s, okay, cool. I love that. Um, alright, this is the big one. Uh, you're going to a desert island, and you get to bring 3 records with you. What are they?
Yeah, so I remember this from the last,
Oh, yeah, I asked you this in the podcast as well, yeah.
yeah, no, I love it, 'cause I'm definitely sticking with, like, my favorite, one of my favorite bands, Cultura Profética.
Mhm.
That was the MOTA album. So that one's a must for me. I think that album covers a lot of ground and for an island, it's perfect. It's Spanish reggae, but it goes deeper. Definitely it's a life-changing album for me personally.
Cool.
Um, yeah, Kendrick's Damn, I was just hearing it yesterday too. There's just something special about that one. I loved, To Pimp a Butterfly, Good Kid, Mad City, but, like,
Yeah.
that one, I don't know why, it was kinda like him putting everything together in one record. It
Mm,
kind of felt like a combination of both, even though it has a cleaner sound.
mm.
But
Yeah,
I love some of the sampling and production work on there for sure.
yeah,
So damn.
he can do no wrong, really.
Yeah. I said MOTA from, Cultura, and then I remember in the last one I did say, Dark Side of the Moon, which,
Mm,
I know for a lot of people that's kind of their more commercial kind of project that went on to become, top selling and stuff.
it's
But I think,
incredible record.
yeah, my reasoning behind it was that it was the album that I used for a very, very long time for referencing, mixes and mastering and sonics and
Mm,
stuff like that. So, like, that's why that one kind of, was a game changer for me personally. I love the sonics there and the sound. Um, just something I appreciate. I'm not, like, the most, audiophile, but, like, there's certain things that I do like to kinda listen to and pay attention to.
totally.
Um,
Do you have a favorite track from that record?
I really like Eclipse.
Mm,
Um, Money is
yeah,
great.
yeah,
It's just one of those that, like, you never really kinda hear, but, like, yeah, I just love the production and the mixing on there. Just till this day, I mean, that was what, '70s?
yeah. Sometimes I don't know
Or
exactly what year they came out, let's see.
maybe late '60s?
No, I think it was definitely the 70s,
'70s, right?
1973.
73, yeah, there you go. So still early '70s, but for the sound, I mean, it sounds amazing to me. It sounds incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah. There was one where, like, I was thinking about a reggaeton album, um, and, I'm past 3 right now, but, like, I
yeah,
think, Daddy
keep going.
Yankee's, like, Barrio Fino, that was the one that kind of globalized, reggaeton music.
Mm,
And, like, I was just hearing it and I'm like, "Okay, they pulled it off because it still sounds good to this day."
mhm.
There's a lot of the reggaeton albums that don't, where, like, they had their moment and they were great at the time, but this is one that
Yeah,
kinda stands the test of time, and it goes to
okay,
show,
cool.
like, how much of that actually plays a role, right? Like, instrumentation, live music, mixed with, like, digital production and stuff like that, so, it's something to think of that I think about a lot. And the versatility and diversity of the music on the
Mm,
project, I think that helps a lot. It doesn't have a sound,
totally.
but it does have a variety of music. I think that's pretty cool.
Cool. Cool. Those are those are some good selections. And yeah, that's 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 about that's about it for this round of the show. Where can people check out your work and projects and get involved with what you're doing next?
And, so I'm on pretty live on Twitter, Instagram at Xcelencia. Have music pretty much everywhere. So if you wanna listen on catalog, if you wanna listen on sound, Spotify, of course, got music there. But yeah, mostly everywhere. And yeah, you can check out my work there and, I got the upcoming music coming out pretty soon, and hopefully
Hmm.
once I get started, I won't stop.
Yeah. Cool. I can't wait to hear it. And yeah, now that you've been through the ringer, is there anyone that comes to mind who we should have on the show?
Man, that's a great question. I know you just joined the, Black Dave chat. There's a lot
Yeah,
of
I did.
people there that I think would be a great fit. We're
That's
pretty
cool.
diversified in there in terms of, like,
Very true.
technology, music,
Yeah.
culture. I mean, it's great. So, can't think of anyone off the top. There's just so many people right now that I think would be
Yeah.
great.
Maybe I should just talk to Dave. Dave would be a good one for it.
Dave would be a good one, yeah. I feel like lately we've kind of mentioned talking more music, right? Like,
Mm.
it's been a while, like, at least live on the feed, no one's actually talking about music. We're talking
Yeah.
metrics and
Yeah.
how to
New
engage and stuff.
platforms, tech. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I always enjoy a great music conversation, especially with a
Totally.
lot of the AI stuff. That would be a good one. You should bring someone that's kind of, like, in the middle of, like, what's happening with, like, generative AI music and where
Mm.
that's going and what role are artists and songwriters gonna play in the future, you know?
Yeah.
It could be
Yeah,
interesting.
totally. Yeah. No, I think, yeah, especially for those of us just really entrenched in kind of the industry side of things, I think it's important to create space for the music itself and return and be like, oh yeah, this is why we're doing all this stress and putting
Absolutely,
up with all
absolutely.
this shit. So cool, man. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, for being here, for taking the time. Uh, you, always enjoy chatting with you.
Same. Thank you for the opportunity and the platform. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can't wait to hear, the new music and wish you the best of luck as you
Thank you.
prepare
Same.
everything.
Appreciate it. We'll
Thanks,
stay
man.
in touch.
All right. Cool. Sounds
Bye-bye.
good. Take care, man.
Take care.